My mother's will reveal the sibling I never knew existed. The lawyer's voice droned on about assets and beneficiaries, but I stopped listening the moment he said her name. Elena Marie Castellano, born March 15, 1994, biological daughter of Margaret Rose Thompson. My mother's maiden name. My mother, who died 3 weeks ago after a sudden heart attack, leaving behind what I thought were 2 children, my older brother Michael and me. Not 3. I'm sorry, could you repeat that? My voice cracked like I was 13 again, not 34. Mr. Hendricks, our family attorney for the past 2 decades, cleared his throat and glanced at Michael. My brother sat perfectly still in his charcoal suit, hands folded, staring at the mahogany conference table like it held the secrets of the universe. He wasn't surprised. The bastard wasn't even pretending to be surprised. Your mother has left a trust fund of $50,000 to Elena Marie Castellano, with instructions that Ms. Castellano be contacted through the adoption agency. Hendricks shuffled through papers. Blessed Beginnings Family Services. There's also a letter addressed to Elena, and one addressed to you, Sarah. My hands trembled as I accepted the sealed envelope with my name written in Mom's careful cursive. The same handwriting that used to leave notes in my lunchbox, that signed birthday cards with love, Mom, while Michael's always got love and pride, Mom. How long have you known? I asked Michael. He finally looked up, and I saw something I'd never seen in my perfect brother's face before, guilt. Sarah. How? Long. Since I was 18. His voice was steady, controlled. Always controlled. Mom told me when I started working at the firm. She said it was better if you didn't know. You were only 16, still in high school. I'm 34 now, Michael. That's 16 years of lies. Hendricks cleared his throat again. Perhaps we should continue with the reading? There are still significant assets to discuss. The rest was a blur of property deeds and investment portfolios. The family business, Thompson and Associates Real Estate Development, would go to Michael, along with the downtown office building and Mom's house in Riverside Heights. I got her jewelry, her car, and a trust fund of $75,000. Elena, this sister I never knew existed, got $50,000 in 2 letters. After Hendricks dismissed us, I cornered Michael in the parking garage. A sister, Michael. I have a sister, and you never thought to mention it? Mom made me promise. Mom's dead. The words echoed off the concrete walls. She's been dead for 3 weeks, and you still couldn't tell me. Even sitting in that room, you were going to let me find out from a lawyer. Michael loosened his tie, the first crack in his composed facade. It's complicated, Sarah. Elena was given up for adoption when she was born. Mom was 19, unmarried. It would have destroyed Grandpa's political career if anyone found out. So what? Grandpa died when I was 12. What's the excuse for the last 22 years? He didn't answer, just clicked his key fob. His BMW chirped to life. I'm going to find her, I said. Michael froze with his hand on the driver's door. Sarah, don't. Just, let sleeping dogs lie. But I was already walking away, clutching that letter like a lifeline. For the first time in my life, I wasn't going to be the disappointing Thompson child who did what she was told. I was going to find my sister. The letter sat unopened on my kitchen counter for 3 days like a bomb waiting to detonate. I'd called Blessed Beginnings Family Services twice, hanging up both times when the receptionist answered. What was I supposed to say? Hi, I just found out my dead mother gave away a baby 30 years ago, and I'd like to chat with her. Instead, I did what any rational person would do. I stalked Elena online. It took me exactly 47 minutes to find her. Elena Castellano, 30 years old, living in Portland, Oregon. She was a graphic designer with her own small studio called Moonrise Creative. Her Instagram was public, filled with photos of coffee art, hiking trails, and a golden retriever named Buster. In every selfie, she had the same dark eyes as Mom, the same stubborn chin that I saw in the mirror every morning. She looked happy. Genuinely, radiantly happy in a way I wasn't sure I'd ever been. On Thursday evening, I finally tore open Mom's letter. The handwriting was shakier than usual. She must have written it during those final weeks when her heart was already failing. My dearest Sarah. Asterisk if you're reading this, then you know about Elena. I need you to understand that keeping the secret wasn't meant to hurt you. When I gave her up, I was barely older than you were when you graduated college. I was scared, alone, and convinced I was doing what was best for everyone. Asterisk. Asterisk your father knew about Elena when we got married. We talked about trying to find her once, when you were about 10 and kept asking for a sister. But by then she had a family, a life. We didn't want to disrupt that. Asterisk. Asterisk I know you're angry, sweetheart. You had every right to be. But please know that you and Michael were everything to me. Elena was a choice I made out of fear. You two were choices I made out of love. Asterisk. There's something else you need to know about the inheritance. The letter ended mid-sentence. A water stain bloomed across the bottom of the page, the ink smeared beyond recognition. Had she been crying when she wrote it? Or was it just water damage from sitting in the lawyer's safe? Something else about the inheritance. What could she have possibly meant? I was still staring at the ruined letter when my phone rang. Michael. Have you opened it yet? He asked without preamble. Mom's letter? Yes. Have you? A pause. What did it say? You don't know? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. For once, Big Brother doesn't have all the information. It cuts off halfway through. Something about the inheritance. The silence stretched so long I thought he'd hung up. Michael? Don't contact Elena, Sarah. I'm serious. Why? What aren't you telling me? Some things are better left buried. Like our sister was better left buried? Like 30 years of lies were better than the truth? You don't understand the whole situation? Then explain it to me. I was shouting now, pacing my tiny apartment like a caged animal. I'm so tired of being treated like I'm too stupid or too fragile to handle the truth. What is it about Elena that has you so scared? But the line was already dead. I stared at my phone, then at Elena's Instagram page still open on my laptop. She'd posted a new photo 2 hours ago, her and Buster at sunset, mounted rising in the background. The caption read, "Sometimes the universe sends you exactly what you need, exactly when you need it." Maybe she was right. I started typing a direct message. I stared at the blank message box for 20 minutes before finally typing. Asterisk hi Elena. This is going to sound completely insane, but I think we might be sisters. My mother, Margaret Thompson, passed away recently and left you something in her will. I know this is probably shocking, but I just found out about you too. If you're open to talking, I'd love to explain everything. Sarah Thompson asterisk. I hit send before I could chicken out, then immediately wanted to throw my phone across the room. What if she thought I was some kind of scammer? What if she didn't want anything to do with her birth family? What if? My phone buzzed. A notification from Instagram. Asterisk holy shit. I've been looking for Margaret Rose Thompson for 3 years asterisk. My heart stopped. She'd been looking for mom? Another message appeared, asterisk can you call me? Like, right now? 503-555-7829 asterisk. My hand shook as I dialed. She picked up on the first ring. Sarah? Her voice was deeper than I'd expected, with just a hint of a Northwestern accent. Elena. God, I can't believe I'm actually talking to you. I can't believe you found me. I hired a private investigator last year, but they hit a dead end when they couldn't locate Margaret. She's really gone? 3 weeks ago. Heart attack. The word still felt foreign in my mouth. Elena was quiet for a moment. I'm sorry. I know that probably sounds weird coming from a stranger, but you're not a stranger. You're my sister. The word felt right, more right than anything had in weeks. Elena, there's so much I need to tell you. About the will, about our brother Michael. Wait. Our brother? There are 3 of us? Michael's 36. He's known about you since he was 18. I couldn't keep the bitterness out of my voice. Apparently, I was the only one not important enough to share family secrets with. Jesus. What else do you know? About why she gave me up. I told her everything, Mom's letter, the political scandal angle with our grandfather, Michael's weird behavior. When I finished, Elena was quiet for so long I thought the call had dropped. Elena? I'm here. It's just, there's something you need to know too. The private investigator I hired? He found some things. Financial records, mostly. Sarah, I don't think your mother gave me up just because of some political scandal. My stomach dropped. What do you mean? There were bank records from 1994. Large deposits, every month for 2 years. Always the same amount, $5,000. Always from the same source. What source? Thompson and Associates Real Estate Development. Your family's company. The room spun around me. That's impossible. Dad didn't start the company until 1996. I remember because I stopped. Because it was the year everything changed. The year we moved from our tiny apartment to the house in Riverside Heights. The year Mom stopped working at the diner and started volunteering at the country club. Sarah? You still there? The company existed in 1994? According to these records, yes. And someone was paying my birth mother a lot of money. The payment stopped abruptly in December 1995. Right around the time Mom married Dad. Right around the time Michael would have been conceived. Elena, I think someone paid Mom to give you up. And I think I know who. Your father? No. The pieces were clicking into place with horrible clarity. My grandfather. Senator James Thompson. The one with the political career to protect. I was pacing again, my mind racing. But that's not the worst part. What's the worst part? If the company was already established in 1994, if Grandpa was already using it to move money around, then Michael inheriting everything isn't just about real estate. There's something bigger here. Something worth keeping you away from for 30 years. Elena's voice was steel when she responded. Then I guess we better figure out what it is. Are you sure? This could get messy. Michael's not going to just let us. Sarah, someone paid to erase me from this family. I want to know who, and I want to know why. And then I want to make them pay. For the first time since Mom died, I smiled. I can fly out tomorrow, Elena said, and I could hear the determination in her voice. There's a red eye that gets into Chicago at 6 a.m. You don't have to. Sarah, I've been wondering about my birth family my entire life. Now I find out I have a sister and someone tried to buy my silence before I could even talk. Yeah, I'm coming. After we hung up, I sat in my dark apartment staring at Mom's unfinished letter. There's something else you need to know about the inheritance. What had she been trying to tell me? I called in sick to work Friday morning and drove to Riverside Heights. Mom's house sat empty, exactly as she'd left it 3 weeks ago. Michael had the keys, but I still had the spare hidden under the fake rock by the garden shed. The house felt like a mausoleum. Mom's reading glasses still sat folded on the kitchen counter next to a half-finished crossword puzzle. Her coffee mug in the sink, lipstick stain on the rim. I almost turned around and left, but Elena's words echoed in my head, someone paid to erase me from this family. I started in Mom's bedroom, searching through drawers and closets with no clear plan. What was I even looking for? A signed confession? A receipt for child abandonment? It was in her jewelry box, not the nice one Dad had given her for their 10th anniversary, but the old wooden one she'd had since I was little, that I found them. Bank statements from First National, dated 1993 to 1995. An account I'd never seen before. The deposits Elena mentioned were all there. $5,000 every month, like clockwork. But it was the final entry that made my blood run cold, December 15, 1995. A withdrawal of $847,000. The entire account emptied in one transaction. $847,000. Where does a 19-year-old girl get nearly $1 million? My phone buzzed. A text from Michael, asterisk we need to talk. Starbucks on 5th Street. 1 hour asterisk. I was already grabbing my purse. Michael was waiting in the back corner booth, 2 cups of coffee cooling in front of him. He looked like he hadn't slept in days, his usually perfect hair was disheveled, his tie crooked. When he saw me approaching with the bank statements in my hand, his face went ashen. You went to the house. Elena's flying in tonight, I said, sliding into the booth across from him. She hired a private investigator, Michael. She knows about the payments. He closed his eyes. Shit. $847,000. I spread the statements across the table. That's a lot of money for a teenage mother to have lying around. Unless someone gave it to her. Sarah, please. Was it Grandpa? Did he pay Mom to disappear until after Elena was born? Did he pay her to give our sister away? Michael's hands were shaking as he reached for his coffee. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. Mom was supposed to destroy those records years ago. So it's true. Grandpa was going to announce his run for governor. A pregnant teenage daughter would have killed his chances. Michael's voice was barely above a whisper. He gave Mom money to go stay with his sister in Vermont until the baby was born. The plan was adoption, a fresh start, everyone wins. Everyone except Elena. But then Mom fell in love with her. She called Grandpa crying, said she couldn't go through with it. So he sweetened the deal. The coffee in my stomach turned to acid. How much? $1 million. To give up Elena and never speak about her again. And Mom took it. She was 19, Sarah. Alone, scared, with a baby she couldn't afford to raise. Grandpa made it seem like she was doing Elena a favor, giving her to a family who could provide for her properly. I stared at my brother, this stranger wearing Michael's face. You've known this the whole time. Since you were 18. And you never once thought that maybe, just maybe, I deserved to know the truth? There was more, he said quietly. I waited. The money came with conditions. Legal documents. If Mom ever tried to contact Elena, or if Elena ever came looking and Mom acknowledged her, she'd have to pay it all back. With interest. How much interest? Michael met my eyes, and I saw 36 years of buried guilt staring back at me. As of last month? $4.7 million. The number hung between us like a death sentence. $4.7 million. More money than I'd see in 5 lifetimes of teaching. That's why you don't want me to contact her, I said, the pieces finally clicking. It's not about protecting some family secret. It's about protecting the inheritance. Michael's jaw tightened. If Elena contests the will and wins, if she can prove she was coerced out of the family, then Mom's estate becomes liable for the original debt. Everything, the business, the properties, the investments, it all gets liquidated to pay back the Thompson family trust. The Thompson family trust that you now control. Sarah, you don't understand. I understand perfectly. I was surprised by how calm my voice sounded. Elena gets $50,000 in the will, but if she pushes for more, if she digs too deep, then suddenly she's not just claiming her share of the inheritance. She's claiming $4.7 million that none of us have. The business would be destroyed. 3 generations of work, gone. And not just us, there are 47 employees at Thompson and Associates. People with families, mortgages, kids in college. I almost bought it. Almost felt sorry for him. Then I remembered something. What happened to the rest of Mom's money? The original $1 million? Michael shifted in his seat. Real estate investments. It's how Dad really started the company. Mom was his silent partner. Her money, his expertise. So the family business was built on blood money. Sarah. And let me guess, when Mom married Dad, they commingled the assets. Made it impossible to separate what belonged to the Thompson Trust from what belonged to our family. I laughed bitterly. Jesus, Michael. No wonder you became a lawyer. This is one hell of a legal puzzle. He leaned forward, and for a moment he looked like the big brother who used to help me with homework instead of a stranger willing to sacrifice our sister for money. There might be a way out of this, he said. If Elena takes the $50,000 and agrees to a confidentiality clause, if she signs away any future claims to the estate, then the original debt stays buried. She gets something, we keep the business, everyone wins. Everyone except Elena, who gets paid to disappear. Again. It's more than she has now. I stared at him, really looked at him, and realized I was seeing Michael clearly for the first time in my life. Not the golden child, not the successful lawyer, not the perfect son. Just a scared man willing to buy our sister's silence to protect his own comfort. She lands at O'Hare in 3 hours, I said, standing up. I'm picking her up, bringing her to my apartment, and telling her everything. What you do after that is up to you. Sarah, please. Think about what you're doing. I am thinking. For the first time in my life, I'm thinking clearly. I gathered up the bank statements. Mom tried to tell me in that letter. Something else you need to know about the inheritance. She wanted me to find out, didn't she? Even from the grave, she couldn't live with what she'd done. Michael's voice was barely a whisper. If you do this, there's no going back. The family as we know it ends. Good, I said. Because the family as I knew it was a lie. As I walked toward the door, Michael called after me one last time. The debt doesn't just disappear if we lose, Sarah. If Elena pushes this and wins, if the courts rule in her favor, you lose your inheritance too. Your trust fund, the jewelry, everything. Are you really willing to give up $75,000 for someone you've never even met? I turned back to face him and smiled. Ask me again tomorrow, after I've hugged my sister. The flight was delayed by 2 hours. I paced O'Hare's arrivals terminal like an expectant father, clutching a sign with Elena Castellano written in my terrible handwriting. Every time I checked my phone, there were more missed calls from Michael. 7 so far. I'd stopped listening to the voicemails after the 3rd one. When Elena finally emerged from the gate at 8:47 a.m., I recognized her instantly. She had Mom's walk, quick, purposeful strides that ate up ground. But where Mom had always seemed like she was rushing towards something, Elena moved like she was running away from it. Her dark hair was shorter than in her photos, cut in a sharp bob that made her cheekbones look even more like Mom's. Sarah? She stopped 3 feet away, uncertainty flickering across her features. Elena. The word came out as barely a breath. For 34 years, I'd been the youngest Thompson child. Now I was looking at my little sister, and she was beautiful. We stood there for an awkward moment, neither sure of the protocol for meeting secret siblings in airports. Then Elena dropped her duffel bag and stepped forward, arms open. The hug lasted maybe 10 seconds, but something fundamental shifted inside me. This wasn't just some stranger with shared DNA. This was family in a way that felt different from Michael, different from the obligation and competition that had always defined my relationships with blood relatives. You have Mom's hands, I said when we broke apart. Elena laughed, a sound like wind chimes. You have her stubborn chin. I can tell already. During the drive back to my apartment, I filled her in on everything Michael had told me, the debt, the trust fund, the legal web that had kept her erased from our family for 3 decades. Elena listened without interrupting, staring out the window at Chicago skyline. 4.7 million, she finally said as we pulled into my parking garage. Jesus. I know it's a lot to process. No, you don't understand. Elena turned to face me, and her dark eyes were bright with something that looked almost like excitement. Sarah, I'm a graphic designer. I make maybe $40,000 a year on a good year. $50,000 might as well be 50 million to me. I should be jumping at this deal. My stomach sank. Should be? But I'm not going to. She smiled, and it was sharp enough to cut glass. Because fuck them for thinking they could buy me twice. Relief flooded through me so fast I felt dizzy. So what do? We're going to need a lawyer. A good one. Someone who specializes in estate law and isn't afraid to go up against Thompson and Associates. I might know someone. I was thinking of Rebecca Martinez, my college roommate who'd graduated from Northwestern Law and now worked at a firm downtown. We'd lost touch over the years, but she'd sent a sympathy card when Mom died. But Elena, you need to understand, if we do this, if we really contest the will, we could lose everything. Michael wasn't lying about that part. What exactly would you lose? $75,000 in trust. Mom's jewelry. Her car. I paused. Your share too. If the estate gets liquidated to pay the debt, there won't be anything left for any of us. Elena was quiet for a moment, processing. What about Michael? He'd lose the business, the properties, everything. But he's got his own money, his law practice. He'd survive. And you? I thought about my tiny apartment, my teacher's salary, my retirement account that had maybe $12,000 in it. $75,000 would change my life, pay off my student loans, maybe buy a small house instead of renting forever. I'd be fine, I lied. Elena saw right through me. No, you wouldn't. Sarah, I can't ask you to give up your inheritance for someone you just met. You're not someone I just met. You're my sister. The words came out fiercer than I'd intended. And besides, it's not really my inheritance anyway, is it? It's blood money. Built on the lie that you never existed. We climbed the stairs to my apartment in silence. As I fumbled with my keys, Elena spoke again. There's something else I didn't tell you on the phone yesterday. About why I hired that private investigator. I paused, key halfway to the lock. What? I'm pregnant, Sarah. 12 weeks. And when I found out, all I could think about was how I didn't know anything about my family medical history. What if there were genetic issues? What if, her voice caught. I couldn't stand the thought of my kid growing up the way I did. Always wondering. The key turned with a soft click, but neither of us moved toward the door. Does the father? There is no father. Sperm donor. I'm doing this alone. Elena's chin lifted with familiar Thompson stubbornness. Which means this isn't just about me anymore. It's about my kid having a family that actually wants them. I looked at my sister, really looked at her, and saw the future spreading out in front of us. Elena's baby would be my niece or nephew. They'd grow up knowing about us, knowing they belonged somewhere. They'd never have to hire private investigators to find their own family. Okay, I said, pushing open the apartment door. Let's burn it all down. We spent the morning calling lawyers. Rebecca Martinez was in court, but her assistant promised she'd call back before noon. 2 other estate attorneys I found online either had conflicts of interest or quoted retainer fees that made my head spin. Elena sat cross-legged on my couch, laptop balanced on her knees, taking notes in a neat spiral notebook she'd pulled from her duffel bag. What about this guy? She turned the screen toward me. David Chen at Westfield and Associates. Specializes in contested estates, has a whole section on his website about fighting for forgotten heirs. I was about to answer when my phone buzzed. Michael again. The 13th call since yesterday. You should probably take that, Elena said quietly. I don't want to hear whatever threats he's. Sarah. Her voice was gentle but firm. If we're really doing this, we need to know what we're up against. Answer it. I swiped to accept the call and put it on speaker. Finally, Michael's voice filled my small living room. He sounded exhausted. Sarah, we need to meet. All 3 of us. Elena and I exchanged glances. I don't think that's a good idea, I said. I have Mom's original letter to Elena. The one Hendricks was supposed to give her along with the money. And I have other documents. Things you need to see before you make any decisions you can't take back. What kind of documents? Elena leaned forward, speaking directly to the phone. There was a long pause. Elena, I presume. Elena Castellano. Your sister. The one your family tried to erase. I had nothing to do with, Michael stopped himself. Look, can we meet somewhere neutral? There are things about Mom's death, about the timing of everything, that don't add up. If you're determined to contest this will, you need to understand what you're really walking into. Elena was already grabbing her jacket. Where? Lincoln Park. The bench by the duck pond. 1 hour. After he hung up, I turned to Elena. This could be a trap. Some kind of legal ambush. Maybe. But he sounded scared, Sarah. Really scared. She was lacing up her boots, movements quick and decisive. Besides, what's the worst he can do? We're in a public park in broad daylight. An hour later, we found Michael sitting on the designated bench, looking more disheveled than I'd ever seen him. His usually pristine suit was wrinkled, his tie missing entirely. A manila envelope sat beside him on the weathered wood. Elena approached him with the wariness of someone meeting a potentially dangerous animal. You look like hell. Michael laughed, but there was no humor in it. I haven't slept in 3 days. Sarah, when you left Starbucks yesterday, I started thinking about everything Mom said before she died. About the letter, about making sure Elena got what she deserved. What are you talking about? I sat down beside him, Elena remaining standing. Mom didn't have a heart attack, Sarah. Michael's voice was barely above a whisper. She overdosed. Sleeping pills. The doctor called it accidental, said her heart condition made her more susceptible, but... He opened the manila envelope with shaking hands. She left this on her nightstand. He pulled out a sheet of lavender stationery covered in Mom's handwriting. Not the shaky, uncertain script from my letter, but her usual confident cursive. Read it, he said, holding it toward Elena. Elena took the letter, and I moved to read over her shoulder. My darling Elena. Asterisk, by the time you read this, I hope you'll be able to forgive a coward who spent 30 years choosing money over her daughter. Michael will have told you about the debt by now, about why I had to let you go. What he doesn't know is that I've been in contact with your adopted parents since you turned 18 asterisk. My hands flew to my mouth. She knew where you were this whole time? Elena kept reading aloud, her voice growing stronger with each word. Asterisk, I know about your art, your beautiful dog, your little apartment with a view of the mountain. I know you've been looking for me, and I know you hired Mr. Patterson to help. I've been watching from the shadows like a coward, wanting to reach out but terrified of what it would cost, not just me, but Michael and Sarah too asterisk. Asterisk, the diagnosis changed everything. 6 months, the doctor said. Maybe less. I realized I was going to die with this secret, and I couldn't bear the thought of you never knowing how much I loved you. How much I regretted letting you go asterisk. Elena's voice cracked on the next paragraph. Asterisk, the money is gone, sweetheart. I spent the last 2 years quietly liquidating assets, moving funds offshore. The $4.7 million your grandfather's trust thinks we owe them? It's sitting in an account in the Cayman Islands, waiting for you. All of it. Every penny of the blood money that bought your silence asterisk. Asterisk, Michael will inherit a shell company and mortgaged properties. Sarah will get what little remains of my personal effects. But you, my darling girl, you get what was always yours, the price of your birthright, returned with 30 years of interest and a mother's love asterisk. Elena's hands were trembling as she finished reading. Michael was staring at his feet, shoulders shaking. She destroyed everything, he whispered. The business, the properties, all of it. She's been systematically bankrupting the estate for 2 years, transferring assets to accounts Elena can access but the rest of us can't touch. I felt like I was falling through space. That's why you didn't want us to meet. You knew. I suspected. The books haven't balanced properly in months, but Mom handled all the finances personally. I thought maybe she was just getting confused, making mistakes. He looked up at Elena with something that might have been respect. She was protecting you. If the Thompson family trust comes after the estate for that debt, there won't be anything left for them to take. Just a worthless company and underwater mortgages. Elena sank onto the bench beside me, still clutching the letter. She committed financial suicide to give me a life. And stuck us with the consequences, Michael said bitterly. Then he seemed to catch himself. I'm sorry. That was... No, you're right. Elena's voice was steady now, thoughtful. She left you holding the bag for her choices. That's not fair either. We sat in silence for a moment, watching ducks paddle across the pond. Finally, Elena spoke again. The account information. Is it in here? Michael nodded toward the envelope. Everything. Account numbers, passwords, her death certificate to prove inheritance. You're rich, Elena. Richer than any of us ever were. Elena looked at me, then at Michael. What if I don't want to be? What do you mean you don't want to be? I stared at Elena like she'd just announced she was giving up breathing. Elena stood up from the bench, pacing the same 3 steps back and forth that I'd seen Mom do 1,000 times when she was thinking through a problem. I mean, this feels wrong. All of it. Mom spent 2 years destroying your lives to fix mine, and I'm supposed to just take the money and walk away? Michael's laugh was sharp and humorless. Elena, that money is yours by right. Mom owed you a hell of a lot more than $4.7 million. But what about you too? What about the employees you mentioned? What happens to them when the Thompson family trust figures out there's nothing left to collect? I was still processing the magnitude of what Mom had done. Elena, you're talking about giving up generational wealth. That money could set your kid up for life. College, house, everything. With blood money? She stopped pacing and faced us both. I came here looking for family, not a fortune built on lies. Michael pulled out his phone and scrolled through something. I ran the numbers this morning. The trust will come after the estate within 6 months, probably sooner once they realize Elena's been found. When they do, Thompson and Associates will be forced into bankruptcy. 47 people lose their jobs right before Christmas. The guilt hit me like a punch to the stomach. Because we contacted Elena. Because Mom made her choices 30 years ago, and then doubled down 2 years ago instead of finding another way. Elena's voice was fierce. Don't you dare blame yourself for this, Sarah. Or me. But Michael was already shaking his head. There might be another option. Elena, what if you took half the money, enough to secure your future and your kids, and used the rest to settle the debt? The trust would accept $2.3 million over nothing. That still leaves Thompson and Associates bankrupt, Elena pointed out. Not necessarily. Michael was warming to the idea, his lawyer brain kicking into gear. If we could structure it as a buyout instead of a debt settlement. Elena, you'd essentially be purchasing a controlling interest in the company with your own inheritance money. The trust gets paid, the employees keep their jobs, and you become a partner in the business. I felt like I was watching a tennis match, my head swiveling between them. Wait, slow down. Elena lives in Portland. She's a graphic designer, not a real estate developer. Details, Michael said dismissively. She could be a silent partner. I run the day-to-day operations, she collects dividends and has input on major decisions. Elena had stopped pacing and was staring at Michael with an unreadable expression. You'd really want that? Working with a sister you spent 16 years pretending didn't exist? The question hung in the air between them. Michael was quiet for so long I thought he wasn't going to answer. I've spent 18 years carrying Mom's secret, he finally said. 18 years lying to Sarah, lying to myself about why it was necessary. I'm tired, Elena. I'm tired of being the keeper of family shame. What about me? The words came out sharper than I'd intended. In this grand restructuring plan, what happens to Sarah, the teacher who was never important enough to know the truth in the first place? Elena's eyes widened. Sarah, I didn't mean. No, it's fine. It's perfect, actually. I stood up, suddenly needing distance from both of them. Elena gets to be the magnanimous savior, Michael gets to keep his precious company, and I get to go back to my tiny apartment and my $75,000 and pretend this whole thing never happened. That's not what we're saying, Michael started, but I was already walking away. Sarah, wait. Elena called after me. I turned back, and the words came pouring out before I could stop them. Do you know what it's like being the disappointing child your whole life? Always wondering why you're not good enough, not smart enough, not successful enough? And now I find out the real reason, because I was never actually part of the family at all. Just the placeholder until the real daughter came home. Elena's face crumpled. That's not true. Isn't it? I looked between them, Elena with her artistic talent and moral clarity, Michael with his law degree and business acumen. You two have been talking for 20 minutes and already figured out how to save the company and solve everyone's problems. What exactly do I bring to this family besides student loan debt and a studio apartment? Michael stood up slowly. Sarah, you're the one who found her. You're the one who chose truth over money. Without you. Without me, Elena would still be in Portland and none of this would be happening. I started walking toward the parking lot again. Maybe that would have been better for everyone. This time, neither of them followed. I made it halfway across the parking lot before Elena caught up with me, her boots clicking against the asphalt in that same determined rhythm as Mom's had. Sarah, stop. Please. I kept walking. Go back to Michael. You two can figure out your business partnership without me. I don't want a business partnership with Michael. She grabbed my arm, forcing me to turn around. I want a relationship with my sister. Your sister who brings nothing to the table. My sister who drove to O'Hare at 6 a.m. to pick up a stranger. My sister who was willing to give up $75,000 for someone she'd never met. Elena's eyes were bright with unshed tears. My sister who spent her lunch money calling adoption agencies trying to find me before she even knew my last name. I stared at her. How did you? Blessed Beginnings called me Wednesday. Said someone had been asking about me, left a callback number. I reverse looked it up, Sarah Thompson, Chicago Public Schools. She smiled through the tears. You were looking for me before you even read Mom's letter, weren't you? The memory hit me like a slap. Tuesday afternoon, sitting in my empty classroom after the will reading, Googling adoption agencies on my phone while my students' artwork dried on the walls around me. I called 6 agencies before Blessed Beginnings, hanging up each time when they asked for details I didn't have. I had this feeling. Like there was something Mom wasn't telling me, even from the grave. That's not nothing, Sarah. That's everything. Elena's grip on my arm tightened. Do you think Michael would have looked for me? Do you think he would have cared enough to try? I glanced back toward the bench where Michael still sat, staring at his phone with the defeated posture of a man watching his world collapse in real time. He's scared, I said quietly. This is all he's ever known, being the responsible one, keeping the family secrets, making sure everyone else is taken care of. And you're angry, Elena said. You had every right to be. But Sarah, being angry at Mom and Michael doesn't mean you have to be angry at me. A group of joggers passed us, their breathing visible in the October air. I watched them disappear around the curve of the path, envying their simple purpose, just put one foot in front of the other, keep moving forward. I don't know how to do this, I admitted. I don't know how to be someone's sister when I've spent my whole life being nobody's anything. Elena's hand moved from my arm to my shoulder. What if we figured it out together? Not the money stuff, not the business stuff. Just us. What about Portland? Your life there? I can work from anywhere. Graphic design is mostly remote anyway. She paused, and something shifted in her expression. Actually, I've been thinking about moving back to the Midwest since I found out about the baby. Portland's expensive, and I don't really have anyone there. Not family. And Chicago? Chicago has my sister. And my nephew or niece is going to need an aunt who can teach them how to navigate the public school system and make killer spaghetti and stand up to bullies who think money makes them better than everyone else. Despite everything, I smiled. How do you know I make killer spaghetti? Lucky guess. But I'm right, aren't I? Mom's recipe. Extra garlic, touch of brown sugar in the sauce. See? That's what I'm talking about. Family recipes, inside jokes, someone to call when the baby won't sleep and I'm losing my mind. Elena's voice grew serious. I don't care about Mom's money, Sarah. I mean, I care about being financially stable, about giving my kid opportunities. But what I really want is what you and Michael had growing up, someone who knows your history, who shows up for the important stuff. I looked back at Michael again. He'd stood up from the bench and was walking slowly toward us, the manila envelope tucked under his arm. He's not going to just disappear, you know, I said. Whatever we decide about the money, about the business, Michael's still our brother. I know. And maybe that's not such a bad thing. Elena followed my gaze. He made mistakes, kept secrets he shouldn't have. But he also spent 18 years protecting a family that wasn't even complete. That has to count for something. Michael reached us just as a cold wind picked up, scattering dead leaves across the parking lot. His hair was even more disheveled now, and there were shadows under his eyes I'd never noticed before. I called David Chen, he said without preamble. The lawyer Elena found this morning. He can see us at 2 o'clock if we want to explore options for restructuring everything. Elena and I exchanged a look. All of us? I asked. Michael nodded. All of us. Equal partners in whatever comes next. David Chen's office was nothing like the mahogany and leather sophistication of Hendricks and Associates. The walls were covered with framed newspaper clippings about David's cases, local attorney fights for forgotten heirs, David and Goliath, small firm takes on corporate giant, and his desk was buried under stacks of case files held together with rubber bands. This is fascinating, David said, spreading our documents across his conference table like he was assembling a jigsaw puzzle. He was younger than I'd expected, maybe 40, with wire-rimmed glasses and the kind of intense focus that made me understand why his website boasted about his success rate. I've seen families fight over money before, but I've never seen someone systematically dismantle their own estate to protect a child they gave up. Elena shifted in her chair beside me. The question is whether what Mom did was even legal. Oh, it's legal. Unethical as hell from a family standpoint, but completely legal. David pulled up something on his laptop. Margaret had every right to liquidate her assets before death. The problem is going to be proving that the Thompson Family Trust has no legitimate claim to recover their original investment. Michael leaned forward. What do you mean, no legitimate claim? The contracts were ironclad. Contracts signed under duress by a 19-year-old girl who'd just given birth? David's eyebrows shot up. Michael, you're a lawyer. Would you advise a client to rely on a 30-year-old coercion case? I watched my brother's face cycle through several emotions before landing on something that looked like hope. You think we can fight it? I think we can make it expensive enough for them that they'll want to settle. David turned to Elena. The real question is what you want out of this. Full recovery of the offshore accounts? Partial settlement? Complete nuclear option where we expose the whole thing publicly and let the chips fall? Elena was quiet for a long moment, staring at Mom's letter still lying open on the table. What happens if we go nuclear? Best case scenario? The Thompson Trust gets exposed for what it is, a political slush fund that paid to cover up inconvenient family problems. The money becomes legally yours, free and clear. Michael keeps whatever legitimate assets are left in the business. And worst case? David's expression grew serious. Worst case, they come after all of you personally. They've got deeper pockets than we do, and they can afford to tie this up in court for years. You could win eventually, but it might cost you more in legal fees than you'd recover. I felt my stomach drop. How much in legal fees? For a case this complex? We're looking at $2, maybe $300,000 minimum. More if they really want to play hardball. Elena and I exchanged glances. $300,000, more than either of us would make in 5 years. However, David continued, there's another option. Elena, those offshore accounts? Your mother was smart. She didn't just move the money, she put it in a trust with very specific conditions. He pulled out a document I hadn't seen before, pages of legal language that might as well have been written in ancient Greek. According to this, the funds can only be accessed for 3 purposes, Elena's living expenses, medical care for Elena or her children, or... He paused, scanning the page. Or rectifying past injustices against family members who suffered as a result of the original agreement. Michael sat up straighter. What does that mean? It means your mother built in a legal mechanism for Elena to use the money to help you and Sarah. The trust specifically allows for payments to siblings who were collateral damage of the adoption arrangement. Elena's voice was barely a whisper. She planned this whole thing. Every detail. Elena, if you wanted to, you could legally transfer funds to cover Sarah's student loans, set up educational trusts, even provide capital to restructure Thompson and Associates as a legitimate business. All while keeping the bulk of the money protected from any recovery attempts. The room fell silent except for the hum of David's laptop and the distant sound of traffic on LaSalle Street. I stared at the trust document, trying to process what this meant. She knew we'd find each other, I said finally. Even if Michael tried to stop it, even if I chickened out, she knew Elena would keep looking. Elena nodded slowly. And she knew that when we did, we'd want to take care of each other. Michael cleared his throat. So what's our next move? David smiled for the first time since we'd arrived. We call the Thompson Family Trust's bluff. And we do it tomorrow. The next morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls and a text from Michael that just said emergency. Come now. Elena was already awake when I stumbled out of my bedroom, sitting at my kitchen table with her laptop open and a cup of coffee that smelled like she'd made it strong enough to wake the dead. Michael? She asked, nodding toward my phone. Something's wrong. I was already pulling on yesterday's jeans. He never sounds panicked. Never. We made it to Michael's downtown office in 23 minutes, a personal record that involved running 2 red lights and parking in a loading zone. The lobby of Thompson and Associates looked exactly the same as always, polished marble floors, brass nameplates, a receptionist who smiled like she was auditioning for a toothpaste commercial. But something felt different. Urgent. Michael's assistant, Janet, met us at the elevator with the expression of someone delivering bad news at a funeral. They're in the conference room, she said quietly. Michael asked me to bring you straight back. The conference room held more people than I'd expected. Michael sat at the head of the table, still in yesterday's wrinkled shirt, looking like he'd never left the office. David Chen was there with an older woman I didn't recognize. And at the far end of the table sat 2 men in identical navy suits who screamed expensive lawyers. Sarah, Elena, Michael stood up as we entered. We have a problem. The older woman stepped forward. I'm Patricia Williams, David's partner. We specialize in cases like this. She gestured toward the navy suits. These gentlemen arrived at 7 a.m. with some interesting documents. One of the suits, late 50s, silver hair, the kind of confident smile that came from never losing, extended his hand toward Elena. Ms. Castellano, I'm Robert Ashworth from Ashworth, Klein and Associates. I represent the Thompson Family Trust. His handshake was exactly as firm as I'd expected. We need to talk. Elena didn't sit down. About what? About the $4.7 million your birth mother stole from our clients 30 years ago. Ashworth opened a briefcase that probably cost more than my car. And about the additional funds she illegally transferred offshore in the past 2 years. My blood turned to ice. How do you know about the Cayman accounts? Ashworth's smile widened. Ms. Thompson, your mother wasn't nearly as clever as she thought. International banking laws require reporting for transfers over $10,000. We've been tracking her activities since March. David Chen leaned forward. My clients haven't broken any laws. Margaret Thompson had every legal right to dispose of her assets as she saw fit. Dispose of her assets, yes. Dispose of assets that legally belong to the Thompson Family Trust as collateral against outstanding debt? That's fraud. Ashworth pulled out a thick folder. We have bank records, transfer receipts, and sworn affidavits from 3 financial institutions. Mrs. Thompson systematically looted accounts that were pledged against the original loan to cover Elena's situation. Elena's voice was deadly calm. Stop calling it a situation. Your clients paid to buy a baby. Call it what it was. Our clients provided financial assistance to a young woman in crisis, with clear terms for repayment should she ever attempt to reclaim parental rights. The second suit spoke for the first time. He was younger, maybe 40, with the kind of dead eyes that came from years of representing people who thought money could buy anything. Those terms have now been triggered. Patricia Williams slid a document across the table to Elena. They filed suit this morning. They're seeking immediate asset recovery, plus penalties and interest. The total claim is now $8.2 million. 8.2? Michael's voice cracked. Yesterday it was 4.7. Yesterday, we were prepared to negotiate, Ashworth said smoothly. Today, we have evidence of criminal conspiracy to defraud. The additional $3.5 million covers penalties, interest on the fraudulent transfers, and our legal fees. Elena sank into a chair beside me, and I watched the color drain from her face. $8.2 million. More money than any of us would see in 10 lifetimes. There's more, Patricia said quietly. She opened another folder, this one filled with what looked like surveillance photos. They've been watching all of you for weeks. They know about the meeting in the park, about Elena's pregnancy, about Sarah's student loan debt. I stared at a photo of myself walking out of Lincoln Elementary yesterday afternoon, completely oblivious to the camera capturing every step. What do you want? Elena's voice was barely a whisper. Ashworth's smile was sharp enough to cut diamond. Everything, Ms. Castellano. The offshore accounts, the remaining estate assets, and your signatures on documents confirming that you will never again attempt to claim inheritance rights from any member of the Thompson family. And if we refuse? Then we'll see you in court. All of you. We'll freeze every asset, garnish every paycheck, and make sure this case drags on long enough to bankrupt everyone in this room. He snapped his briefcase shut with the finality of a coffin closing. You have 48 hours to decide. After they left, the conference room felt like the aftermath of a tornado. David and Patricia huddled together, speaking in urgent whispers about injunctions and asset protection. Michael sat with his head in his hands, shoulders shaking. Elena stared out the window at the Chicago skyline, one hand unconsciously resting on her still flat stomach. We could run, she said finally. Take whatever money we can access and disappear. Change our names, start over somewhere they can't find us. For the rest of our lives? I shook my head. What kind of life is that for your baby? Better than the alternative. Elena turned back to face us. Sarah, they know where you work. They have photos of your apartment building. Even if we fight this and win, they'll destroy us first. Michael looked up, and I saw something in his eyes I'd never seen before, not fear, not guilt, but a cold, calculating anger that reminded me exactly whose son he was. No, he said quietly. They won't. What do you mean, no? I stared at Michael, wondering if the stress had finally broken him. They have $8 million in legal firepower and photos of us buying coffee. What exactly are you planning to do? Michael stood up and walked to the window, his reflection ghost-like against the glass. I've been thinking about this wrong. We've all been thinking about this wrong. He turned back to face us, and for the first time in days, he looked like a competent lawyer I'd grown up watching. They don't want $8.2 million. David Chen looked up from his whispered conference with Patricia. I'm sorry, what? Think about it. The Thompson Family Trust, what is it, really? It's Senator James Thompson's political legacy fund. His war chest for buying influence and covering up scandals. Michael started pacing, his voice gaining strength with each word. They've spent 30 years keeping Elena's existence quiet not because of money, but because of what it represents. Elena frowned. What it represents? Proof that the Thompson political dynasty was built on buying babies from teenage girls. Michael's smile was sharp and dangerous. Sarah, do you remember what Grandpa was famous for in the Senate? I searched my memory. Family values. He sponsored that big childcare bill in the 90s, always talking about protecting children and supporting adoption. The pieces clicked into place with horrible clarity. Oh my God. Senator James Thompson, champion of family values, who gave speeches about the sanctity of adoption and the importance of keeping families together. Michael's laugh was bitter. While simultaneously paying young mothers to give up their children to protect his political career. Patricia Williams was frantically taking notes. That's actually brilliant. Michael, do you have any documentation of your grandfather's political positions on adoption rights? Boxes of it. Campaign materials, voting records, speech transcripts. Dad kept everything in the basement of the Riverside Heights house. Michael turned to Elena. They're not afraid of paying $8 million. They're afraid of what happens when the Chicago Tribune runs a headline like Family Values Senator's secret baby buying scandal. Elena's hand moved to her stomach again. But they have surveillance photos. Evidence of fraud. Evidence of fraud that proves their original case, David interrupted, his eyes lighting up with the same dangerous gleam as Michael's. Ladies and gentlemen, I think we just found our nuclear option. I felt like I was missing something crucial. Can someone explain this in terms a high school English teacher can understand? Patricia smiled for the first time since I'd met her. Sarah, they can't expose your mother's financial transfers without also exposing why those transfers were necessary. Every document they file in court, every piece of evidence they present, proves that a sitting U.S. senator paid to cover up an inconvenient pregnancy. The statute of limitations ran out years ago on the original transaction, Michael added. But there's no statute of limitations on political scandal. Especially when the Thompson Family Trust is still operating, still funding political campaigns, still covering up inconvenient truths. Elena was staring at all of us like we'd collectively lost our minds. Are you seriously suggesting we blackmail them? I'm suggesting we negotiate from a position of strength instead of weakness, Michael corrected. They want to play hardball? Fine. But they're not the only ones with ammunition. David was already pulling out his phone. I have a contact at the Tribune. Investigative journalist who's been looking for a big political corruption story. He paused, finger hovering over the screen. Elena, this is your choice. We can take their deal, give them everything, and hope they leave us alone. Or we can remind them that secrets cut both ways. Elena stood up and walked to the window where Michael had been standing. The October sun cast long shadows across her face, and for a moment she looked exactly like Mom, determined, fierce, and slightly terrifying. How long do we have before that reporter could run the story? If we give him everything today? 48 hours, maybe less. Elena turned back to face us, and her smile was pure Thompson family stubbornness. Make the call. The Tribune's newsroom smelled like stale coffee and ambition. David Chen led us through a maze of desks covered in takeout containers and towers of case files, past reporters who looked up with the predatory interest of sharks sensing blood in the water. Marcus Rivera looked exactly like I'd pictured an investigative journalist, rumpled shirt, 3 days of stubble, and eyes that missed nothing. He'd cleared a space at his desk for David's boxes of documents, but his attention was focused entirely on Elena. So you're the ghost, he said, shaking her hand. I've been chasing Thompson family shadows for 2 years. Never thought one would walk into my office. 2 years? I glanced at David. You didn't mention he was already investigating. Marcus pulled out a recorder the size of a matchbox. Started with campaign finance irregularities. The Thompson Family Trust has been moving money in some interesting patterns: shell companies, offshore consulting fees, payments to adoption agencies. He looked directly at Elena. Your name came up in financial records from Blessed beginning 6 months ago. Someone had been making inquiries, and the trust got nervous enough to hire a forensic accounting firm. Elena sank into the chair beside his desk. They've been tracking me since I hired the private investigator. Earlier than that. They've had monitoring software on financial databases, looking for anyone searching Thompson family records. Marcus opened his laptop and pulled up a spreadsheet that made my head spin. Elena Marie Castellano, born March 15, 1994. First search query for Margaret Rose Thompson logged January 8, 2023. Within 24 hours, Ashworth, Klein and Associates was retained by the trust. Michael was studying the spreadsheet over Marcus's shoulder. That's why they moved so fast after Mom died. They knew Elena was already looking. And they knew your mother had been liquidating assets. Marcus clicked to another screen showing a timeline that stretched back 2 years. Margaret Thompson wasn't just moving money randomly. Every transfer corresponds to a date when Elena made some attempt to find her birth family. Address change notifications, employment records, even social media posts about wanting to find biological relatives. The implications hit me like a freight train. Mom was watching Elena too. She was protecting her. More than that, Marcus said. Margaret Thompson was one of my sources. The newsroom seemed to freeze around us. Elena's face went white. What? David's voice was barely above a whisper. Marcus pulled out a manila envelope thick with documents. She contacted me 8 months ago. Said she had information about political corruption involving adoption agencies and campaign finance violations. We met twice, once in February, once in April. She never mentioned meeting with a reporter, Michael said, but his voice lacked conviction. She was scared. Said she'd spent 30 years keeping someone else's secret, but her time was running out. Marcus's expression softened as he looked at Elena. She showed me photos of you. Your art, your apartment, your dog. Said she'd been following your life through social media and your website since you turned 18. Elena's hands were shaking. She was proud of me? She was terrified for you. The trust was closing in, asking questions about the original adoption records. She knew they'd eventually trace the private investigator back to you. Marcus opened the envelope and spread out photocopies of bank records, legal documents, and what looked like personal correspondence. She wanted to make sure the truth came out even if something happened to her. I stared at a letter in Mom's handwriting addressed to Marcus Rivera, dated just 3 weeks before her death. She knew she was dying. Heart condition was getting worse. But Sarah, she also knew they were getting desperate. Marcus pointed to a document I recognized, the same trust paperwork David had shown us yesterday. Your mother didn't just move money offshore to protect Elena. She documented everything. Every illegal payment, every covered-up scandal, every time the Thompson Family Trust used political influence to hide inconvenient truths. Michael grabbed the edge of the desk. How many other families? 17 that we can prove. Girls between 16 and 22, all from politically connected families. All paid to disappear. Marcus's smile was grim. Elena, your story isn't just about getting your inheritance back. It's about exposing a 30-year pattern of buying silence. Elena stood up abruptly. I need air. She was halfway to the elevator before I caught up with her, David and Michael close behind. The October wind hit us like a slap as we stepped onto LaSalle Street, and Elena leaned against the building's limestone facade like she needed the support to stay upright. 17 families, she said quietly. 17 other women like my birth mother. Elena, Michael started. No. Her voice was stronger now, filled with something I was starting to recognize as Thompson family steel. They're still doing this, aren't they? Still paying people to disappear, still covering up scandals. David nodded grimly. The trust is currently funding 6 political campaigns and has made payments to at least 3 other adoption agencies in the past year. Elena looked at each of us in turn, then back at the Tribune building towering above us. How long do you need to write the story? Marcus had followed us outside, still clutching his recorder. With what your mother gave me. I could have the first article online tonight. Do it, Elena said. All of it. The payments, the other families, everything. Elena, are you sure? I touched her arm. Once this goes public, there's no going back. They'll come after us with everything they have. She placed her hand over mine, and her smile reminded me exactly of Mom's, fierce and loving and completely unafraid. Good. Let them come. The Tribune's online edition went live at 11:47 p.m. By midnight, my phone was buzzing every 30 seconds with calls from numbers I didn't recognize. Elena and I sat on my couch, refreshing the article page and watching the comment count climb: 347, 521, 892, 1,204. Political dynasty's dark secret, Thompson family trust paid millions to silence young mothers, read the headline in bold black letters that seemed to burn themselves into my retinas. Elena's photo was there, not the candid shots from the surveillance files, but a professional headshot she'd given Marcus that afternoon. She looked confident, determined. The caption read, Elena Castellano, 30, graphic designer and expectant mother, is one of 17 women whose families were paid by the Thompson Trust to surrender parental rights. My phone rang again. This time I recognized the number, Rebecca Martinez, my college roommate who'd become a lawyer. Sarah, what the hell is going on? Channel 7 just ran a breaking news segment about your family. They're calling it the biggest political scandal since. I know. I'm watching. The TV was muted, but I could see the familiar Thompson and Associates logo plastered across the screen next to an unflattering photo of Senator James Thompson from his 1994 gubernatorial campaign. Are you safe? Do you need somewhere to stay? I looked at Elena, who was scrolling through Twitter with the focused intensity of someone watching a car accident in real time. I think so. Elena, are you okay? She held up her phone. Marcus just texted. 3 more families have come forward in the past hour. Women who saw the article and realized they weren't alone. Her voice was steady, but I could see her hands trembling. One of them has documentation from 1997. Another from 2003. Rebecca's voice crackled through the speaker. Sarah, listen to me carefully. If this story is true, if there's really a paper trail of systematic corruption, then you're about to be in the middle of a federal investigation. You need representation, and you need it tonight. Before I could answer, someone started pounding on my apartment door with a kind of insistence that meant either emergency or law enforcement. Elena and I froze, staring at each other. Sarah Thompson, this is Agent Martinez with the FBI. We need to speak with you about the Thompson Family Trust. My heart stopped. Elena grabbed my hand, squeezing so tight I could feel her pulse racing through her fingertips. Sarah? Sarah, what's happening? Rebecca's voice seemed to come from very far away. FBI, I whispered into the phone. They're here. The pounding continued, more urgent now. Ms. Thompson, we know you're inside. We're not here to arrest anyone, we need your cooperation with an ongoing investigation. Elena stood up slowly, her face pale but resolute. Let them in. Are you insane? Sarah, if they wanted to arrest us, they wouldn't be knocking. She walked toward the door, then paused. Besides, we haven't done anything wrong. The people who should be scared are the ones who've been buying babies for 30 years. Agent Martinez turned out to be a woman in her 40s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense handshake. She was accompanied by a younger agent who introduced himself as Agent Chen, no relation to David, apparently, and carried a briefcase that looked suspiciously similar to the one Robert Ashworth had brought to Michael's office. Ms. Thompson, Ms. Castellano, thank you for cooperating. Agent Martinez settled into my kitchen chair like she planned to stay a while. We've been investigating financial irregularities involving the Thompson Family Trust for 18 months. Tonight's Tribune article filled in some significant gaps. Elena perched on the edge of the couch. What kind of gaps? The kind that turned tax evasion and campaign finance violations into federal crimes. Agent Chen opened his briefcase and pulled out a thick folder. Wire fraud, racketeering, violation of adoption laws across state lines. We're looking at a RICO case that could bring down some very powerful people. My mouth went dry. RICO? Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act, Agent Martinez explained. When you have a pattern of criminal activity conducted through an organization, like a family trust, it becomes a federal matter. Elena leaned forward. What do you need from us? Everything. Financial records, communications with family members, documentation of any attempts to coerce or intimidate you. Agent Martinez's smile was grim. Ms. Castellano, you're not just a victim anymore. You're our star witness. As if on cue, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number, * beautiful article. Hope you enjoyed your 15 minutes of fame. Some secrets are worth killing for *. Agent Chen was reading over my shoulder before I could blink. When did you receive this? Just now. My voice sounded like it was coming from someone else. Elena's face went white. They're threatening us. No, Agent Martinez said, already dialing her phone. They're making our case for us. Threatening federal witnesses is a felony. She spoke rapidly into the phone. I need a trace on a number, and I need protective detail for 2 witnesses. Priority 1. Agent Chen was typing on his laptop with practiced efficiency. The text originated from a burner phone registered to a shell company. Same shell company that's been funneling money from the Thompson Trust to various political campaigns. Elena stood up and started pacing, that familiar Thompson family trait I was learning to recognize. How long before they're arrested? Depends on how smart their lawyers are, Agent Martinez said. But Ms. Castellano, threatening federal witnesses while under investigation for racketeering? That's not smart. That's desperate. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Michael, *, where are you? Ashworth and 6 other lawyers just showed up at my office with federal marshals. They're seizing everything, *. I showed the text to Agent Martinez, who smiled like Christmas morning had come early. Looks like someone just made our job a lot easier. 6 months later, I stood in the lobby of the newly renamed Castellano Thompson development, watching Elena direct the installation of our company sign. She'd traded her Portland flannel for Chicago business casual, but her stubborn chin was exactly the same as she argued with the installation crew about the font spacing. It needs to be 2 inches higher, she called out, one hand resting on her now obvious bump. And the C isn't aligned properly. Michael emerged from the elevator, laughing at something his assistant Janet was telling him. The shadows under his eyes were gone, replaced by something I hadn't seen in years, genuine happiness. Federal immunity in exchange for testimony had a way of lifting 30 years of guilt off someone's shoulders. Elena, it looks perfect, he said, joining us near the windows. Besides, we have bigger things to worry about today. Agent Martinez had called that morning with news we'd been waiting for since February. The last of the Thompson Family Trust board members had accepted a plea deal rather than face trial. 18 counts of racketeering, wire fraud, and violation of federal adoption laws. The trust itself was being dissolved, its assets distributed to the families they'd spent decades silencing. 47 families, Elena said softly, still staring up at our sign. 47 women who thought they were alone. The settlement had been beyond anything we'd imagined. Elena's offshore accounts, legitimate inheritance, the courts had ruled, remained untouched. But the trust's dissolution had uncovered an additional $63 million in assets that were being distributed among the families they'd coerced. Elena would receive $4.2 million, I'd get $1.8 million, and the rest would go to the other families Marcus Rivera's investigation had uncovered. But more importantly, the Thompson and Associates client list had been clean. Michael's employees kept their jobs, and our new partnership had already landed 3 major development contracts. Turns out, being the family that brought down a political corruption ring was surprisingly good for business. Ms. Thompson? Janet approached with a manila envelope. This just came by messenger. From the adoption registry in Vermont. Elena's face lit up as she tore open the envelope. We'd filed paperwork 6 months ago, hoping to connect with other birth parents who'd been caught in the trust's web. The response had been overwhelmingly positive, women reaching out to share stories, offer support, and in some cases, rebuild relationships with children they'd thought were lost forever. It's from Maria Santos, Elena said, scanning the letter. Her daughter Jessica wants to meet her. She's 26, lives in Denver, just had a baby of her own. I watched my sister's face as she read, marveling at how much had changed since that first phone call to Portland. Elena had moved to Chicago in December, bought a condo 6 blocks from my apartment. We had dinner together twice a week, talked every day, and argued about everything from baby names to business decisions with the comfortable familiarity of siblings who'd known each other forever. Michael joined us, reading over Elena's shoulder. That makes 23 successful reunifications. 24, Elena corrected, placing her hand on her stomach. This little one gets to grow up knowing exactly where they came from. My phone buzzed with a text from David Chin, Ashworth sentenced today. 12 years federal prison. Justice served asterisk. I showed the message to Elena and Michael. Robert Ashworth, the silver-haired lawyer who'd strutted into Michael's office threatening to destroy us, had been the last holdout, refusing plea deals and insisting the trust's actions were legal. The jury had disagreed. Unanimously. 12 years, Elena said thoughtfully. Good. Maybe he'll have time to think about the families he helped tear apart. As the installation crew finished their work and packed up their equipment, the 3 of us stood together in the lobby, staring up at the sign that represented everything we'd fought for. Not just money or business success, but the simple, radical idea that family wasn't something you could buy or sell. Elena slipped her hand into mine, and Michael moved to stand on my other side. For the first time in my life, I felt like I belonged somewhere, not as the disappointing Thompson child or the forgotten sister, but as exactly who I was supposed to be. Sarah Thompson Castellano, survivor, sister, and finally home.